I hid in the back seat with a birthday cake and a watch, waiting to surprise my son. The car doors opened. My son got in. A woman slid beside him. Her voice was ice. "Your troublesome mother won't be a problem much longer." I froze, the torn blue ribbon cutting into my palm, the sweetness of the cake turning to ash in my throat. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Helen Shaw. I am 73 years old. I have one child. Evan is 38. My only son. My husband Frank died 18 months ago. Heart attack in our garden. He was picking tomatoes for dinner. I live alone now in the house we bought in 1987. White paint. Green shutters. 2 bedrooms upstairs. Frank's workshop in the basement. Evan visits once a week. Sits for 20 minutes. Drinks coffee. Asks if I need anything. Then leaves. Always rushing. Always busy. He is a lawyer. Successful. Works long hours. Important cases. Big clients. Makes more money than Frank and I ever dreamed of. Tomorrow is Evan's 39th birthday. He has been working late every night this month. Too busy for dinner. Too busy for phone calls. No time for celebrations. I wanted to surprise him. Baked his favorite chocolate cake. Wrapped the watch Frank left for him. Planned to leave both in his car. In the parking garage. A surprise for when he finished work. I found his car easily. Silver sedan. Clean as always. I had brought my gifts to put on his seat. Then I would leave. Quick and simple. But I saw him walking toward the car. Not alone. A woman with him. Talking. Business clothes. Briefcase in her hand. I slipped into the back seat. Decided to wait. To surprise him when he got in. Like when he was little. Hide and seek in reverse. I folded myself into the back seat. My bones creaked like old hinges. The cake box pressed against my ribs. Chocolate frosting had leaked onto the ribbon. Sweet and sticky against my fingers. The car smelled like leather cleaner and Evan's cologne. Too strong. Always too strong. I settled in to wait. Thought I might even surprise him when he got in. Then I heard footsteps. His keys jangled once. Sharp and final. Like coins in a collection plate. The driver door opened. But he did not start the engine. Another door opened. Closed softly. I knew that sound. Tessa Ward from his law firm. Her heels clicked against the pavement. Then silence. She settled beside him. Her voice was smooth. Professional. Like she was reading the weather forecast. The power of attorney draft was ready, she said. All the beneficiary changes had been completed. The deposit for Sunny Meadows had been placed. They should list the house before spring. Before the market cooled. My house. The house where I raised him. Where Frank died in our bed. Where I still watered his tomatoes. Evan spoke in numbers. Runway months, he called them. Payment schedules. Something about an expansion plan for the firm. Between them, my name floated. Not as a person. As an obstacle. I pressed my back against the seat. The frosting had melted onto my wrist. I did not move to wipe it. Tessa described safety. Routine meals. Relief from stares. Her words wrapped around me like a blanket I had not asked for. Suffocating and warm. Evan agreed. His mother signed whatever he put in front of her now. Grateful for help with the paperwork. Ever since Dad died, she just nodded and signed. His mother. Not Mom. Not even Helen. The city moved past the tinted windows. Buildings. Trees. People walking dogs. Normal life continuing while mine was being dismantled. I counted my breaths. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Nursing school had taught me that. 40 years ago, when I was someone who saved lives instead of having mine erased. My chest rose and fell. Rose and fell. The cake box shifted with each breath. They talked about my medication. How I sometimes forgot which pills to take. Evan said I had left the stove on twice last month. I had not. The pilot light had gone out. Different thing entirely. Tessa made sympathetic sounds. Little murmurs of agreement. She understood how hard this must be for him. Watching his mother decline. Having to make the difficult decisions. Difficult for him. The car turned left. Then right. I recognized the route to downtown. To the restaurant where they would celebrate. Where they would toast their success over wine and appetizers. My success would be staying invisible. Staying silent. Not disrupting their careful plans. The leather seat was warm now. Warmed by my body heat. The cake box had settled into the curve between my hip and the door. Chocolate and vanilla. His favorite flavors when he was 7. When he still called me Mama. Tessa was talking about my gardening. How I spent too much time outside. How the neighbors worried about me digging in the dirt. Getting dirty. Getting tired. I had been gardening for 30 years. I knew every plant, every season, every root system in that soil. But now it was evidence of my decline. Evan mentioned the spare key. How I had given it to Mrs. Chen next door. How that showed poor judgment. Lack of boundaries. Security concerns. Mrs. Chen brought me soup when I was sick. Watered my plants when I traveled. But now she was a security risk. The car slowed. Stopped. Restaurant noise drifted through the windows. Laughter. Conversation. The clink of glasses. They got out. Doors slammed. Footsteps faded. I waited. Counted to 60. Then 60 again. The street was busy. People walked past without looking in. I was invisible in the back seat. Just another shadow behind tinted glass. I slipped out. The cake box caught on the doorframe. The ribbon tore. A small rip in blue paper. Like everything else today. Damaged but still holding together. A taxi was waiting at the corner. Yellow and ordinary. The driver had kind eyes. Middle-aged. Like me before I became old overnight. I gave him my address. He did not ask questions. Did not comment on the cake box or the torn ribbon. Just drove while I watched my son's car grow smaller in the rear window. The house looked the same. White paint. Green shutters. Frank's roses climbing the porch rail. But it felt different now. Like a patient in a hospital bed. Breathing but not quite alive. I set the cake on the kitchen table. Next to the cracked bowl of seed packets. Tomatoes. Basil. Marigolds. Plans for a spring I might not see from this address. I did not cry. Tears were for later. For when the work was done. Instead, I found paper. A pen that wrote in blue ink. I made a list. Deed. Bank accounts. Insurance policies. Witnesses. Attorney. Next to each item, I left space. For dates. For names. For signatures that would be mine to give or withhold. The house settled around me. Familiar creaks. The hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the wall clock Frank had bought at an estate sale. Normal sounds. Normal life. But everything had changed. I put the cake in the refrigerator. Saved the ribbon in my pocket. Evidence of a birthday that had gone sideways. Of a son who saw his mother as paperwork to be filed. Tomorrow, I would begin to file back. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Morning came with the taste of metal in my mouth. I had not slept, had not tried to sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, stared at the metal box. Frank's filing system, neat folders, clear labels, everything in its place. I pulled the box closer. Heavy as a coffin, cold under my palms. The deed came first. Smooth paper, clean edges, my name still there. Helen Shaw, Frank Shaw, joint ownership. But something felt wrong. I kept digging. Bank statements from the past 6 months. Numbers that made no sense. Changes I had not made. Account titles that read differently now. Primary holder Evan Shaw. Secondary Helen Shaw. When had that happened? When had I become secondary on my own accounts? The insurance policy was worse. Beneficiary line crossed out. New name typed over mine. Clean as surgery. Final as death. I spread the papers across the table. Like a nurse charting symptoms. Looking for patterns. Finding them everywhere. The months after Frank's funeral. My grief thick as fog. Evan bringing papers to sign. Kind words about simplifying things. Making life easier. I had signed, trusted, nodded when he explained. Now I saw what I had signed away. The morning light was thin. Gray. It made the papers look yellow. Ancient. Like evidence of something already dead. I needed coffee. Strong and black. The kind that cuts through confusion. At the bank, I wore my good coat. Navy blue with silver buttons. Frank had bought it for our anniversary. I wanted to look capable. In charge. The manager was young. Younger than Evan. Smooth face. Smooth voice. He explained that my son had been added as primary holder to simplify things. That word again. Simplify. As if my life was too complicated for me to handle. Too messy for an old woman to manage. I asked for copies of every change made in the past 2 years. Every signature card. Every authorization. He hesitated. Said he would need to check with his supervisor. I waited. Hands folded. Back straight. The way Frank taught me to sit when dealing with officials. The copies came in a manila envelope. Thick as a book. Heavy with my own signature. Over and over. Helen Shaw agreeing to disappear. Next stop was the bakery. Marla's place on Elm Street. I bought nothing. Just listened. Marla mentioned seeing Evan there last month. With his girlfriend. Looking at wedding cake samples. Planning something special. Planning. Always planning. I walked home slowly. Each step measured. Each breath counted. At the kitchen table, I made phone calls. My voice steady. Matter of fact. First call Carol Miles. My friend who had fought her stepson in court. Won her house back. Kept her dignity intact. Carol gave me names. Lawyers who understood elder law. Who fought for people like us. People whose families saw dollar signs instead of faces. I wrote the names carefully. Phone numbers in blue ink. Addresses spelled out complete. Second call Monica in Phoenix. My sister. 3 years younger. Sharp as a tack. I told her I might need her to come. To be a witness. To stand beside me when the fighting started. Monica asked no questions. Said she would book a flight. Would be here in 2 days. That is what sisters do. They show up. Third call Dr. Leena Patel. Independent evaluator. Carol had given me her name. Said she was fair. Thorough. Not easily fooled. An appointment for tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. By afternoon, I was taking pictures. Evidence of my competence. My ability to manage my own life. Medication bottles lined up on the counter. Each labeled in my handwriting. Dosages. Times. Instructions clear as daylight. The furnace schedule taped to the basement door. My handwriting again. When to change filters. When to call for service. How to restart after power outages. My bill-paying ledger. Every first Tuesday. Every account current. Balance to the penny. The garden journal. 5 years of planting dates. Harvest records. Weather notes. Proof that my mind still worked fine. I photographed it all. Each page. Each list. Each sign that I was not the confused old woman they needed me to be. The house felt different now. Not like a patient waiting to die. Like a fortress preparing for siege. I called the locksmith. New deadbolt. New keys. Appointment for tomorrow afternoon. I called Mrs. Chen next door. Asked her to keep an eye out. To notice who came and went. To remember what she saw. Mrs. Chen had survived the Cultural Revolution. She understood about documents. About people who wanted to take what was not theirs. By evening, I had an appointment with Naomi Greer. Elder law attorney. Highest rating on the Bar Association website. Available Friday morning. I had my sister coming. My locks changing. My evidence organized. The metal box sat empty now. All the papers sorted into new piles. Truth in one stack. Lies in another. Plans in a third. I reheated leftover soup for dinner. Chicken and rice. The kind Frank used to make when I worked late shifts. The soup tasted like memory. Like better times. Like when people meant what they said. Outside, the street was quiet. Normal people living normal lives. Not knowing their families were planning to erase them. I ate slowly. Chewed each spoonful. Tasted salt and pepper and thyme. Tomorrow would bring doctors and lawyers. Questions and evaluations. The machinery of proving I was still alive in my own life. But tonight, I sat in my kitchen. In my house. At my table. Making my plans. The cake was still in the refrigerator. Untouched. Waiting for a birthday that would not come. Not the birthday Evan expected, anyway. I threw the cake away. All of it. Box and frosting and memory. Some things were too sweet to save. The ribbon, though, that I kept. Evidence of intention. Proof of love betrayed. I folded it carefully. Put it in the metal box. Next to the new key I would have tomorrow. Some evidence was worth preserving. Some stories needed to be told complete. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Dr. Leena Patel had gentle hands and sharp eyes. Her office smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh coffee. No hospital smell. No decay. She asked me to sit in the chair by the window. Natural light. No shadows to hide behind. The evaluation felt like walking through rooms I had lived in all my life. Familiar questions. Expected answers. She handed me a ledger. Asked me to balance a month of expenses. I did the math in blue ink. Carried the ones. Added the columns twice. She asked about Frank's pension. Start date. Monthly amount. Survivor benefits. I recited the numbers like a prayer. No hesitation. No doubt. She asked what I would do if the power went out. I listed the steps. Flashlight in the kitchen drawer. Candles in the bedroom. Generator manual taped inside the basement door. I spoke without decoration. Without trying to impress. Facts were enough. Dr. Patel took notes in neat handwriting. Like a nurse charting vitals. Recording what she observed. She asked about my medications. I named each one. Dosage. Purpose. Time of day. Side effects to watch for. She asked about my garden. I described the soil conditions. The planting schedule. Which vegetables grew best in partial shade. Her pen moved steadily across the page. Recording competence. Documenting clarity. At the end, she looked at me directly. Told me I was precise. Said she would write exactly that in her report. Precise. Like a clock that keeps perfect time. Naomi Greer's law office was downtown. 3rd floor. Windows that faced the courthouse. Like she could see justice from her desk. Naomi was younger than me but older than Evan. Gray hair pulled back. No jewelry except a wedding ring worn thin. She spread my documents across her conference table. Bank statements. Insurance papers. Property deeds. The evidence of my erasure. Her strategy unfolded like a battle plan. 3 fronts. All moving at once. First, file to prevent any guardianship proceedings. Stop them before they started. Block any medical evaluations done without my consent. Second, gather affidavits from people who knew me. Neighbors. Doctors. Anyone who could testify to my competence. Third, request a freeze on any contested transactions. Stop the money from moving until the court could review. Naomi explained that we would assume good faith in our legal filings. But prepare for the absence of it. Plan for war while hoping for peace. She had seen this before. Adult children who confused convenience with care. Who saw inheritance as current income. The courier arrived that afternoon while I was changing the locks. New deadbolt. New keys. The locksmith was efficient. Professional. Asked no questions. Legal papers were served to Evan at his office. Copies delivered to Tessa's law firm. Notice that the game had changed. That I was no longer playing victim. I placed the digital recorder on the mantel where it could be seen. Where it could hear everything. Hidden things had already done their damage. This would be visible. Obvious. Legal. The evening light was soft. Golden. It made the living room look peaceful. Like a place where reasonable people might have reasonable conversations. My phone buzzed at 6:30. Text message from Evan. He wanted to meet. To discuss how to simplify my life. Make things easier for everyone. Simplify. That word again. Like I was a math problem that needed solving. 20 minutes later, my email chimed. Message from Tessa Ward. Professional letterhead. Concerned tone. She recommended I consider Sunny Meadows Senior Living. 24-hour support. Medication management. Social activities. Safety and security. She attached a brochure. Smiling old people playing cards. Eating meals they had not cooked. Living lives they no longer controlled. I stood at the kitchen sink. Looked out at Frank's garden. Tomatoes heavy on the vine. Basil growing thick and green. I spoke aloud to the empty room. My voice clear, steady, final. I manage my own life. The words hung in the air like a statement of fact. Like testimony given under oath. I manage my own medications. My own money. My own decisions. I know when to plant. When to harvest. When to fight. The house settled around me. Familiar creaks. Comfortable sounds. The tick of the wall clock Frank had wound every Sunday. This was my home. My life. My choice. I would not be simplified. The recorder sat silent on the mantel. Waiting. Ready. Like a witness preparing to testify. I made tea in Frank's favorite mug. Blue ceramic with a chip on the handle. He had refused to throw it away. Said broken things could still be useful. I understood that now. Understood that being damaged was not the same as being disposable. My phone rang at 8 o'clock. Evan's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again at 8:15. 8:30. 8:45. I did not answer. There was nothing to discuss. Nothing to negotiate. The legal papers had said everything that needed saying. I was not confused, not incompetent, not ready to disappear. The tea was chamomile, soothing. It tasted like evening, like peace after battle. Outside, the street was quiet. Porch lights coming on. Normal families having normal dinners. Not knowing how lucky they were. Mrs. Chen's kitchen window glowed yellow. She was making dumplings, the same recipe her mother had taught her. Traditions passed down instead of stolen. I thought about Monica, flying here tomorrow, leaving her own life to help save mine. That is what families should do. Stand together, protect each other, not plan each other's disappearance. I washed the mug carefully, dried it with a dish towel worn soft by time, put it back in its place on the shelf. Everything in its place, everything where it belonged, including me. The recorder's red light blinked steadily. Patient, persistent, recording silence for now. But silence would not last forever. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more papers, more attempts to convince me I needed saving. But tonight, I sat in my kitchen, in my house, making my own decisions, managing my own life. The words felt stronger each time I said them, like a muscle getting used to lifting weight. I turned off the lights one by one, checked the locks, both the old ones and the new. Upstairs, I laid out clothes for tomorrow. Court clothes, serious clothes, the kind that said I meant business. Frank's watch sat on the dresser, the one I had planned to give Evan for his birthday. Now it would stay where it was, with me, where it belonged. Some gifts could not be given to people who saw you as a burden. Some love had to protect itself. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. They came on Friday with folders and the smell of rain. Evan and Tessa. Business clothes. Serious faces. The tone of people solving problems. I served tea in the good china. White cups with blue flowers. Wedding gift from Frank's mother. My hands stayed steady as I poured. They sat in the living room like visitors. Which is what they were. Visitors in my house, planning my future without asking. Evan presented the papers like a gift. Called it consolidation. Said it would make life simpler for everyone. One account he would manage. One place for bills to flow. One signature now to prevent confusion later. Tessa opened a thick binder. Care Trust printed on the cover. Legal words inside. Complex language about safety and security. She spoke about protection. About making sure I would always be taken care of. About removing the burden of difficult decisions. I let them finish. Let them say their pieces. Then I began mine. I mentioned the nursing home deposit. April 1st. Sunny Meadows. Paid without my knowledge or consent. Evan's face went pale, like someone had drawn the blood out with a needle. I mentioned the bank accounts. Primary and secondary holders switched. My name moved down like I was being demoted. I mentioned the insurance beneficiary. Changed while I was grieving. While I trusted him to help with paperwork. Tessa's smile cooled by degrees. Like ice forming on a window. Slow but visible. She suggested I might be confused. Grief could affect memory. People my age sometimes mixed up the details. I pointed to the digital recorder on the mantel. Red light blinking. Recording every word. Legal in this state, I told them. No consent required in your own home. Naomi Greer sat in the kitchen. Within earshot. Taking notes that looked like fence posts. Straight lines marking territory. Evan tried a different approach. Said I had been misplacing keys. Forgetting where I put things. showing signs of decline. I walked to the kitchen drawer, opened the box labeled spare keys, set it on the coffee table between us. House keys, car keys, mailbox keys, garden shed, all labeled in my handwriting, all in their proper places. The keys chimed when I moved the box. Like a small bell, clear and true. There would be no signatures today, I told them. I would keep copies of their papers, study them with my attorney. Tessa suggested bringing in a clinician, someone who could evaluate me in the comfort of my own home. Make sure I was thinking clearly. I handed her Dr. Patel's report. 3 pages of professional assessment. Competency confirmed. Capacity documented. Then I handed over the legal injunction. Filed that morning. No evaluations without my written consent. No medical intake without court approval. The meeting ended not in argument but in silence. Papers sliding across the coffee table. Steam rising from untouched teacups. When the door closed behind them, I wrote 2 lines in my notebook. Rules for survival. Do not be hurried. Do not be alone. Words to live by. Words to fight by. The afternoon stretched long and quiet. I called the locksmith again. Different company this time. More locks. Better security. The man who came was my age. Gray hair. Gentle hands. He understood about safety. About people who needed to keep other people out. New deadbolts on front and back doors. New locks on the windows. Keys that had never been copied. Never been given away. I gave 1 set to Mrs. Chen. Told her to call the police if anyone tried to enter without permission. Mrs. Chen nodded. Said she would watch. Said she understood about documents and people who wanted to take what was not theirs. She had survived worse than this. Had seen families destroy themselves for money. I called Tom Fletcher across the street. Asked him to be a witness if anyone returned. To note who came, when they left, what they carried. Tom had been a mailman for 30 years. He noticed things, remembered details, knew the difference between visitors and intruders. I called Dr. Morrison, my family doctor for 15 years. Asked him to document my current state, mental capacity, physical health, decision-making ability. He scheduled me for Monday morning. Full evaluation, complete records, professional opinion on letterhead. The original deed went into a manila envelope, along with Frank's will, my insurance policies, bank account information, important papers, irreplaceable documents, too valuable to leave in the house. I drove to the bank, rented a safety deposit box, put everything inside, turned both keys in the lock. Some things needed to be beyond reach, protected from helpful hands. Evening came early, gray clouds heavy with more rain. The house felt different, stronger, like a fortress that had tested its walls. I made soup from ingredients I chose. Ate bread I had baked myself. Drank tea from Frank's favorite mug. Simple pleasures, self-determined choices, the building blocks of dignity. My phone buzzed twice. Text messages from Evan. I did not read them. Did not need to. Some conversations were finished. Some relationships changed forever by truth. I sat in Frank's chair, the one by the window, where he used to read the paper, plan the garden, watch the neighborhood settle into evening. The digital recorder sat silent on the mantel, but ready, always ready. Tomorrow they might return, with different papers, different arguments, different people to convince me I needed saving. But tonight, I was safe. In my house, behind my locks, protected by my choices. I thought about Monica. Flying in tomorrow. Bringing reinforcements. Bringing witness. Blood that would stand with blood. Family that acted like family. The rain started after dark. Steady drops against the windows. The sound of things being washed clean. I checked each lock before bed. Tested each window. Made sure my fortress was secure. In the bedroom, I laid out clothes for tomorrow. Strong colors. Serious fabric. The uniform of a woman who meant business. Frank's picture sat on the nightstand. Wedding day. Young faces. Bright futures. Before we learned that families could betray themselves. I touched the glass. Told him about the day. About the fight. About the victory. He would have been proud. Would have stood beside me. Would have helped me choose the locks. Some battles you fight alone. Others you fight with the memory of love. Both kinds can be won. The house settled around me. Familiar sounds. Protective sounds. The breathing of a place that knew its owner. This was my home. My sanctuary. My stand. No one would take it from me. No one would simplify me out of my own life. Some things were too precious to lose. Too important to surrender. Like dignity. Like choice. Like the right to manage your own existence. I turned off the light. Listened to the rain. Counted my breaths. In the morning, I would continue the fight. But tonight, I would rest in the safety I had built. Behind locks I had chosen. In a house I had protected. Surrounded by decisions that were mine. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Monday morning brought a knock at my door. Sharp. Insistent. The sound of people who expected to be let in. I looked through the peephole. A man with a leather bag. Gray suit. Professional smile. Evan stood behind him on the porch. Tessa waited in the car at the curb. The man announced himself as Dr. Richards. Said he was here for a home evaluation. To assess my living situation. To ensure my safety and well-being. I stepped onto the porch where the doorbell camera could see everything. Where the digital recorder could capture every word. I had not requested an evaluation, I told him. Had not given consent for any medical assessment. Had, in fact, filed legal papers preventing exactly this. The man persisted. Said Evan was concerned about my welfare. Said it was just a brief chat. Nothing formal. Nothing to worry about. I declined politely. Firmly. Then I handed him a copy of Dr. Patel's evaluation. Recent. Thorough. Complete. I also handed him a copy of the court injunction. Signed by a judge. Filed by my attorney. Clear as daylight about unauthorized evaluations. The man's professional smile flickered. Like a candle in wind. I called the non-emergency police number. Not 911. Nothing urgent. Just documentation of unwanted visitors. Attempted medical coercion. Violation of court orders. The dispatcher knew my name. Naomi had prepared them for this possibility. They would send an officer to document the incident. Dr. Richards and Evan left quickly. Polite but brittle. Like glass pretending to be flexible. The police officer was young but thorough. Took pictures of the legal papers. Wrote down names and license plates. Filed a report that would become evidence. He suggested I consider getting a restraining order. Said this behavior showed a pattern of harassment. I thanked him. Said my lawyer would advise me on next steps. After he left, I called Naomi. Told her about the fake doctor. The attempted evaluation. The violation of the injunction. Naomi was quiet for a long moment. Then she said she would have her investigator look deeper. Follow the money trail. Find out who was really behind this. The investigator's name was Marcus Webb. Former FBI, now freelance. Good at finding connections that people preferred to hide. Marcus called me Wednesday evening. His voice was calm, but his news was not. He had traced email threads between Tessa and a private lending company. Bridge loans, they called them. Money borrowed against anticipated inheritance. High interest. Quick funding. The lender specialized in elder manipulation cases. Convinced families to push aging relatives toward nursing homes. Then bought the houses cheap when families needed cash for care costs. Marcus had found 2 other families caught in the same trap. Same fake doctor. Same care trust documents. Same lender waiting in the wings. It was a business, not personal betrayal, just money harvesting old people like crops. Somehow that made it worse. And easier to fight. I tightened my defenses without becoming a prisoner. Strategy, not paranoia. I added Carol Miles as a second signature on utility accounts. Power company. Water department. Phone service. 2 people now required to make changes. I posted my daily schedule on the refrigerator. Walk at 9. Grocery store Tuesday. Library Thursday. Visible routines that could be witnessed. I invited friends for tea on rotation. Monday Carol. Wednesday Ruth from church. Friday Margaret from book club. Regular visitors who would notice if something went wrong. The house stayed full of names. Full of witnesses. Full of people who cared about me as a person, not a bank account. I called Irene at the bakery. Asked about the receipt from the day Evan had looked at wedding cakes with Tessa. Irene remembered. Young man with dark hair. Asking about sheet cake for 100 people. The woman with him talked about venues and dates. Planning a future with money that was not yet theirs. Irene sent me a copy of the receipt. Along with a note in her careful handwriting. You taught my daughter to read a clock when she was 5. I remember kindness. I'm here if you need me. Small gestures. Large meanings. The difference between community and isolation. The fake Dr. Richards turned out to be Thomas Manning. Tessa's cousin. Former physician stripped of his license for insurance fraud. Now working as a professional evaluator for families who needed elderly relatives declared incompetent. A family business. Corruption passed down like recipes. Marcus found 3 more cases. Families who had lost everything. Old people warehoused in facilities while their children spent their inheritance early. The pattern was clear. The evidence growing. The net closing around Tessa and her operation. But patterns take time to prove. Evidence needs to be organized. Justice moves slowly when money is involved. I had to survive until the system caught up. Evening became my practice time. I sat in Frank's chair and worked on being bored. Boredom was the opposite of fear. The antidote to panic. Fear made your heart race. Made your breathing shallow. Made you weak and easy to manipulate. Boredom made you steady. Made you think clearly. Made you hard to shake. I practiced watching dust motes in the lamplight. Counting breaths without rushing. Letting silence fill the room like water filling a glass. Slowly. Completely. Without urgency. Fear wanted me to run. To hide. To make hasty decisions that would help their case. Boredom wanted me to wait. To watch. To let them make the mistakes. I chose boredom. Chose patience. Chose the long game. My phone rang less often now. Text messages stopped coming. Email went quiet. They were regrouping. Planning their next move. Consulting with lawyers and lenders and fake doctors. Good. Let them plan. Let them spend money on schemes. Let them dig themselves deeper into legal trouble. I would be here when they surfaced. Waiting. Ready. Armed with evidence and witnesses and the quiet power of someone who had nothing left to lose. Nothing except my dignity, my home, my right to choose my own path. Some things were worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth boring yourself to death to protect. I made tea in the blue ceramic mug, Frank's favorite, chipped but still useful, damaged but not disposable. Like me, the house settled into evening. Familiar sounds, protective sounds, the breathing of a place that knew its owner was staying put. Mrs. Chen's kitchen window glowed warm across the street. Tom Fletcher walked his dog past my front yard. Normal neighborhood rhythms, life continuing as it should. I was part of this place. These people, this community that had watched me raise my son, nurse my husband through his final illness, tend my garden season after season. They would not let strangers erase me, would not let fake doctors evaluate my worth, would not let money replace memory. Some fights you fight alone. Others you fight with an army of quiet supporters. People who remember who you were before you became a target. I turned off the lights one by one. Checked the locks Tom Fletcher had helped me install. Set the recorder to standby mode. Tomorrow might bring new schemes. New papers. New people claiming to help while planning to hurt. But tonight, I was safe. In my fortress. Behind my walls, surrounded by the evidence of my competence. The rain had stopped. Stars were visible through the bedroom window. Frank's picture smiled from the nightstand. I practiced boredom until I fell asleep. Dreamless, peaceful, ready for whatever morning would bring. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The courthouse smelled like coffee and old wood. Decades of decisions soaked into the walls. Justice and injustice layered like paint. I wore my navy coat. The one Frank bought for our anniversary. Silver buttons polished until they shone. Armor disguised as clothing. Monica sat beside me, my sister, my witness, her presence solid as a wall. She had flown 2,000 miles to stand with me. Blood supporting blood. Naomi spread our evidence across the table. Neat stacks. Clear labels. The paper trail of my competence. Dr. Patel's evaluation came first. 3 pages of professional assessment. Mental status exam. Cognitive testing. Decision-making capacity. All normal. All documented. Then the affidavits. Mrs. Chen describing our conversations about gardening. Tom Fletcher noting my daily walks. Regular schedules. Consistent routines. Dr. Morrison's letter. 15 years as my physician. No signs of dementia. No cognitive decline. Blood pressure controlled. Medications managed properly. Bank records showing my bill-paying history. Every first Tuesday. Every account current. Balances tracked to the penny. Organization that spoke of clarity, not confusion. Photographs of my medication boxes. Each labeled in my handwriting. Dosages correct. Timing precise. No errors or omissions. The maintenance log for my house. Furnace serviced on schedule. Gutters cleaned before winter. Repairs completed promptly. Evidence of someone managing her own life. Naomi presented each piece like a nurse charting vitals. This is who Helen Shaw is. This is how she functions. This is the competent woman you are trying to erase. The judge was older than my son. Younger than me. Glasses that caught the light. A face that had seen families destroy themselves for money. He asked me to describe my storm preparation routine. I did, step by step. Flashlights charged. Candles located. Generator instructions posted. Water stored. Radio batteries fresh. Like reciting a recipe I had perfected over years of practice. He asked about my medications. I named each one. Purpose. Dosage. Side effects to monitor. Drug interactions to avoid. Knowledge earned through careful attention, not confusion. He asked about my finances. I explained my budget. Fixed income from Frank's pension. Social security. Careful spending. Money managed, not wasted. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just facts delivered in my own voice. Tessa's lawyer presented their case like a funeral director selling caskets. Concern wrapped in legal language. Care disguised as control. They described the burden of managing property. The dangers of living alone. The wisdom of professional oversight. The peace of mind that came with surrendering responsibility. Under cross-examination, their concern thinned like paint in water. The nursing home appointment had been scheduled without my knowledge. The deposit paid without my consent. My signature forged on the application. The trust document made Evan sole decision-maker for all major transactions, including the sale of my house, the liquidation of my assets, the management of my medical care. The private lender's term sheet projected proceeds within 60 days. Bridge loans secured by anticipated inheritance. Money borrowed against assets that were not yet theirs to claim. A business plan disguised as family concern. Naomi introduced evidence of the fake doctor visit. Police reports. Photographs of the court injunction he had ignored. His real identity as a disbarred physician working as a professional evaluator for hire. The pattern of elder exploitation. Multiple families. Same fake doctor. Same trust template. Same lender waiting to profit from confusion and grief. The judge listened without drama. Took notes in careful handwriting. Asked pointed questions that made the lawyers shift in their seats. Then he spoke, also without drama, in the flat tone of someone stating facts. The petition for guardianship was denied. With prejudice. No refiling allowed without substantial new evidence. Any further medical evaluations required my written consent. Signed in the presence of my attorney. No exceptions. The contested bank account changes were frozen pending full review. No transactions allowed without court approval. The private lender's arrangement was referred to the state attorney general for investigation. Along with complaints against Thomas Manning and his medical evaluation business. The gavel came down like a period at the end of a sentence. Final. Complete. Done. In the hallway afterward, Evan stood alone. Tessa had disappeared. Probably calling her own lawyer. Probably calculating damages to her career. Evan looked smaller somehow. Like someone who had lost weight suddenly. The confidence drained out of him along with his scheme. He started to speak, started to explain, started to rationalize what he had tried to do. I did not lecture, did not argue, did not waste energy on words that would change nothing. I thanked Naomi, hugged Monica, walked outside into air that smelled like rain and freedom. The courthouse steps were marble, worn smooth by decades of people seeking justice. Some finding it, others learning to live without it. I had found it today. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. The quiet kind that comes from being heard. From being believed. From being allowed to remain yourself. Monica drove me home through streets that looked the same but felt different. Familiar buildings, known corners, but now seen through the eyes of someone who had fought for the right to see them. The house appeared around the corner like a patient sitting up in bed. Still pale, still recovering, but breathing on its own again. Inside, everything was exactly as I had left it. My books on their shelves. My dishes in their cupboards. My life in its proper order. Frank's photograph smiled from the mantel, next to the digital recorder that had captured so much truth. Evidence of voices that revealed intention. Words that exposed hearts. I made tea in the blue ceramic mug, the one with the chip that Frank had refused to throw away. Useful things did not have to be perfect. Valuable things did not have to be unmarked by time. Monica sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where I had first spread out the evidence of my erasure, where I had planned my resistance, where I had chosen to fight instead of disappear. We did not talk about the hearing, did not analyze the victory, did not celebrate with loud voices or dramatic gestures. Instead, we sat in comfortable silence. Sisters who had stood together. Family that had acted like family should. The afternoon light was golden. It made the kitchen look peaceful. Like a place where normal people lived normal lives. Where decisions belonged to the person living them. My phone sat silent on the counter. No urgent messages. No demands for signatures. No helpful suggestions about simplifying my existence. The quiet felt like a gift. Like the space between musical notes that makes the melody possible. I thought about tomorrow. About the ordinary routines I would resume. Grocery shopping on Tuesday. Library on Thursday. Garden work when the weather permitted. Simple choices. Self-determined schedules. The building blocks of a life lived on your own terms. The house settled around us like a deep breath finally released. The walls seemed straighter, the floors more solid, the windows clearer, like a patient who had survived surgery. Weak but healing, scarred but breathing, changed but still essentially itself. Some battles end with surrender, others with victory. The best ones end with the simple right to continue being who you have always been. I sipped my tea, watched the light change on my sister's face, listened to my house remember how to be a home again. Outside, Mrs. Chen was watering her flowers. Tom Fletcher walked his dog past my front yard. Normal neighborhood rhythms, life continuing as it should. I was still part of this place. These people, this community that had testified for me when testimony was needed. Tomorrow I would thank them properly. Tonight I would simply exist in the space I had defended. The space that was mine to keep. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Consequences walked on paper feet. Soft sounds. Steady progress. Justice moving at the speed of documents. The private lender withdrew first. Vanished like smoke when investigators started asking questions. Left no forwarding address. No explanation. No apology to the families they had targeted. Money predators knew when to run. When to find new hunting grounds. When to disappear before the law caught up. Tess's firm announced an internal review on Tuesday. By Thursday, it had broadened into subpoenas. State investigators requesting files, client lists, communication records. The kind of review that ended careers, destroyed reputations, led to criminal charges. 2 more families filed statements with the Attorney General. Similar schemes. Same fake doctor. Same trust templates. Same lender promising quick cash against future inheritance. A 3rd family spoke to a newspaper reporter. Names withheld for privacy, but the story told in clear detail. Elder abuse disguised as elder care. The pattern was visible now. Documented. impossible to dismiss as isolated incidents or misunderstandings. Naomi filed a criminal complaint on Friday. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Fraud by deception. Conspiracy to commit theft. The language of justice translated into legal terms. Investigators asked questions that spanned months. Years. Phone records. Email trails. Bank transfers. The digital fingerprints of greed. Evan sent 3 messages across 3 weeks. Each one different. Each one revealing. The first message was typed. Formal. Business letter format. He explained the pressure he had been under. The expansion costs for the firm. The opportunity that had seemed legitimate at the time. Rationalization dressed up as explanation. Weakness disguised as circumstance. I did not respond. Did not acknowledge. Did not waste energy on words that changed nothing. The second message came 2 weeks later. Handwritten this time. His penmanship still neat. Still precise. Like when he was in school. This one apologized. Said he understood my anger. Said he had lost his way. Made terrible decisions. Hurt the person who had raised him. Remorse that might have been genuine. Or might have been strategy. Hard to tell the difference when trust had been broken so completely. I did not respond to this one either. Forgiveness was not something you could request by mail. The third message arrived on a Saturday morning. Brief. Simple. Direct. He asked if he could help repair the porch light. The one that had been flickering for months. Nothing else. No explanations. No apologies. Just an offer to fix something broken. This message I answered. Come at 2 on Saturday. Bring nothing but tools and time. He arrived with a toolbox. Worn leather. Frank's gift to him when he bought his first house. Before law school. Before ambition turned him into someone I did not recognize. We worked without commentary. Without small talk. Without pretending the past 3 months had not happened. He unscrewed the old fixture. Careful not to drop the glass shade. Gentle with components that were older than he was. I held the new bulb. LED. Long-lasting. Designed to burn steady for years without replacement. He tested the wiring. Checked the connections. Made sure everything was secure before turning the power back on. The light came on clean and bright. No flickering. No hesitation. Just steady illumination where there had been uncertainty. We stood on the porch and looked at our work. 2 people who had once been family. Who might be family again someday. But not today. He packed his tools quietly. Efficiently. The way Frank had taught him when he was 12 years old. When he left, I stood on the steps and watched the street return to normal. Neighbors walking dogs. Children riding bicycles. Ordinary life continuing around extraordinary damage. The light would work now. Would welcome visitors. Would keep the darkness at bay. Small repairs sometimes carried large meanings. 3 weeks later, Evan entered his plea at the county courthouse. Guilty to financial exploitation. Guilty to breach of fiduciary duty. Guilty to conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 2 years probation. Community service. Restitution of all funds taken. His law license suspended indefinitely. Not prison. But not freedom either. The kind of punishment that followed you. That showed up in background checks. That explained why you no longer practiced law. His legal career was over. His reputation destroyed. His future limited by the choices he had made when he thought no one was watching. The man who had posed as Dr. Richards turned out to be easier to prosecute. Previous convictions. Pattern of fraud. No legitimate defense for impersonating a physician. Thomas Manning received 3 years in state prison. No probation. No second chances. The kind of sentence that protected other families from his particular brand of cruelty. But Tessa faced a different kind of destruction. The state bar investigation had found email threads going back 2 years. Communications with multiple lenders. Instructions for recruiting new victims. Percentages of proceeds clearly outlined. She had not just participated in elder exploitation. She had organized it, systematized it, turned the victimization of vulnerable people into a business model. The Bar Association moved swiftly. Emergency suspension of her license. Professional conduct hearings. Ethics violations that would end any legal career permanently. Her law firm fired her immediately. Clients withdrew their cases. Professional references evaporated. The legal community closed ranks against someone who had violated their most sacred trust. No criminal charges. But something worse for someone like Tessa. Professional death. Career obliteration. The complete destruction of everything she had worked to build. The newspaper ran a follow-up story. 3 families interviewed, all describing similar experiences, all grateful that someone had fought back, had stopped the scheme before more damage was done. One woman said I had saved her from losing her farm. Land that had been in her family for 4 generations. Almost stolen by children who saw acreage as dollar signs. Another man credited my case with exposing the fake doctor who had been targeting veterans. Men who had served their country. Who deserved better than to be preyed upon in their retirement. Small victories multiplying. Ripple effects spreading outward. One person standing up making it easier for others to do the same. I kept the newspaper clippings in a folder. Not from pride. From evidence. Proof that resistance mattered. That fighting back was worth the cost. The house felt different now. Not like a fortress under siege. Like a home where normal life could resume. Where ordinary decisions belonged to the person living there. I resumed my routines. Grocery shopping on Tuesday. Library on Thursday. Garden work when weather permitted. Simple schedules. Self-determined choices. The porch light worked perfectly. No flickering. No uncertainty. Just steady illumination against the darkness. Mrs. Chen brought soup when I had a cold. Tom Fletcher shoveled my driveway after the first snow. Irene at the bakery saved the last cinnamon roll when she saw me coming. Community returning to normal. Neighbors acting like neighbors. Life continuing as it should when families do not destroy themselves for money. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations. Others with quiet restoration. The best ones end with the simple right to continue being who you have always been. I made tea in Frank's blue mug. Sat in his chair by the window. Watched the neighborhood settle into evening routines. Normal life. Ordinary moments. The precious gift of managing your own existence. The digital recorder sat silent on the mantel. No longer needed. No longer recording threats disguised as concern. Evidence preserved for the prosecutors. Justice served through proper channels. Criminals held accountable for their crimes. Some battles you fight alone. Others you fight with an army of people who believe in doing what is right. Both kinds can be won. When you refuse to surrender. When you document everything. When you trust the system to protect people who cannot protect themselves. The light burned steady on the porch. Welcoming visitors who came with honest intentions. Keeping watch against those who did not. Some repairs last longer than others. Some changes make all the difference. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. 6 months later, spring arrived on schedule. The earth soft enough to work. The soil ready for new seeds. Time to plant what had been planned through winter. The garden woke on its own timetable. Daffodils first, then tulips, then the careful green shoots of vegetables that knew their season. I cut a ribbon in the vacant lot beside the church. Red satin against chain link. The Shaw Community Garden. Funded in part by restitution money. Money taken from me, now given back to the neighborhood. Monica stood beside me. Carol brought seedlings in plastic trays. Ruth from church carried packets of marigold seeds. Margaret from book club brought her grandmother's watering can. Irene arrived with fresh cinnamon bread. Still warm from the oven. The smell mixed with earth and possibility. Sweet and fertile and full of promise. The children came with their parents. Eager hands and careful questions. Where should the sunflowers go? How deep to plant the beans? When would the tomatoes be ready? I showed them the plot labeled First Light. Their section, their responsibility. Their chance to watch something grow from nothing but attention and time. They planted with the seriousness of surgeons. Each seed placed with intention. Each furrow measured. Each label written in careful letters. Their parents took pictures. Children with dirt under their fingernails. Faces smiling in the April sun. Evidence of community building itself from the ground up. The lot had been empty for 3 years. Weeds and broken glass. A place where nothing good happened. Where people walked quickly past without looking. Now it would grow food. Feed families. Teach children where their meals began. Turn waste into wonder through the simple act of caring. Some victories were won in courtrooms. Others were planted in soil. Mrs. Chen brought her paper cup and watered the violets she had transplanted from her own garden. Purple flowers that would spread. Take root. Make beauty where there had been emptiness. Tom Fletcher installed the tool shed. Painted green. Stocked with shovels and hoses and hope. Everything labeled. Everything in its place. Everything shared. The garden would need tending. Daily attention. Seasonal care. The kind of work that rewarded patience more than speed. Like rebuilding trust. Like healing community. Like learning to hope again after betrayal. My phone buzzed during the dedication ceremony. Text message from the prosecutor's office. News I had been waiting for. News I had earned through persistence and courage. The State Bar Association had completed its investigation. Tessa Ward's law license had been permanently revoked. She was banned from practicing law in any jurisdiction. Her career was over. The message included a note from the lead prosecutor. Your complaint exposed a pattern of professional misconduct. Your courage protected other vulnerable families. Justice served through proper channels. I sat on the garden bench and let the news settle where anger used to live. No prison time, but something perhaps worse for someone like Tessa. Professional obliteration. Career death. The complete destruction of her life's work. Relief arrived without triumph. No celebration. No satisfaction. Just the quiet knowledge that dangerous people had been stopped. That vulnerable families were protected. Some wins were measured in licenses revoked. In careers ended. In predators stripped of the tools they used to harm others. I walked home past the senior living facility that had been chosen for me without consent. Sunny meadows. Bright windows. Manicured lawns. Safe and sterile and supervised. A woman in a wheelchair sat by the entrance, watering violets with a paper cup. Purple flowers in a window box. Beauty maintained despite limitations. I wished her well in the privacy of my mind. Hoped her family visited often. Hoped her choices were honored. Hoped she was there because she wanted to be, not because someone had decided for her. Different paths for different people. Different definitions of safety and independence. Different ways to measure a life well lived. But choices should belong to the person living them. That much I had learned. That much I had fought to preserve. My house appeared around the corner like an old friend. Familiar. Welcoming. Still mine to enter and leave as I pleased. The porch light burned steady. No flickering. No uncertainty. Just reliable illumination where there had once been darkness. Inside, everything was exactly as I had arranged it. My books on their shelves. My dishes in their cupboards. My life organized by my own logic. Frank's photograph smiled from the mantel. Next to the space where the digital recorder had sat. No longer needed. No longer recording threats. Evidence preserved but danger past. I opened the refrigerator and found it there. Hidden behind the milk and eggs and ordinary groceries. The birthday cake I had saved. Wrapped in foil. Waiting. 6 months in the freezer. Preserved like evidence. Like hope deferred but not abandoned. The chocolate frosting had crystallized slightly. The vanilla layers were dense but intact. Still recognizably cake. Still sweet despite the cold storage. I cut a slice with the good silver knife. Set it on Frank's favorite plate. The one with the small chip that he had refused to replace. Damaged but still beautiful. Imperfect but still functional. Like most things worth keeping. The cake tasted like memory. Like better times. Like birthdays celebrated with love instead of suspicion. It tasted like survival. Like persistence. Like the sweetness that remains after bitterness has been swallowed and digested. I ate slowly. Each bite deliberate. Each crumb honored. The celebration I had planned for Evan. Now a celebration for myself. For staying. For fighting. For refusing to disappear when disappearing would have been easier. The evening light was soft. Golden. It made the kitchen look like a painting. Still life with cake and satisfaction and hard-won peace. Tomorrow I would tend the community garden. Water the seeds. Pull the weeds. Teach children the difference between plants and volunteers. Simple work. Honest work. The kind that built community instead of destroying it. Tonight I would finish my cake. Frank's cake. The cake that had traveled from surprise to evidence to celebration. From love to betrayal to redemption. Some things were too sweet to waste. Too meaningful to discard. Too important to let others define their purpose. The ribbon lay in the kitchen drawer. Blue paper. Torn but preserved. Evidence of intention. Proof of plans derailed but not destroyed. I smoothed it carefully. Added it to the folder with the newspaper clippings and court documents. The complete record of a battle fought and won. Not for glory. Not for revenge. But for the simple right to remain yourself. To make your own choices. To eat cake when you decide it is time. The house settled around me like a deep breath finally released. Familiar sounds. Protective sounds. The breathing of a place that knew its owner was staying put. Mrs. Chen's kitchen window glowed across the street. Tom Fletcher's dog barked at something only he could see. Normal neighborhood sounds. Life continuing as it should. I was still part of this place. These people. This community that had testified for me when testimony was needed. That had stood with me when standing required courage. Tomorrow there would be seeds to plant. Children to teach. Gardens to tend. Community to build from the ground up. Tonight there was cake to finish. Sweet and cold and earned through persistence. The taste of victory served on good china. The flavor of survival shared with the memory of love. Some battles end with surrender. Others with transformation. The best ones end with cake and the knowledge that you fought for something worth preserving. I raised my fork to Frank's photograph. To the memory of better times. To the promise of ordinary moments yet to come. The cake was perfect. Cold and sweet and exactly what I needed. Food for celebration. Sustenance for the soul. Proof that some things were worth waiting for. Worth fighting for. Worth saving for the right moment. Worth sharing with the people who mattered most. Even if that person was yourself.